Hi, my name is Anmari Pradhan, and this is Climatic Scale, a podcast for innovation and sustainability leaders that focus on the energy transition. We discuss the scaling question with industry leaders, corporates, and scaling startups to understand what we really need to do to get to net zero. And today, I am super excited to have our guest, Dr. Wolfgang Grundinger, who is the chief evangelist at Enpal, one of the biggest solar companies in Europe and definitely in Germany. So, Wolfgang, welcome.
Hi, Aneri. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So, tell me your story. What got you into energy and what does it mean to be a chief evangelist?
Yeah, maybe let's start with the latter. The job function of chief evangelist is actually quite common in the tech sector, not so common in the energy field, but let's say not unknown in the tech sector. It stems from the 1980s, where Guy Kawasaki was the first official evangelist at Apple at the time, building up Apple together with Steve Wozniak and Steve Jobs. We are not so young to remember that time, but in the 1980s, few people had a PC, a personal computer, and they didn't know why they should have one. So you needed to preach them why they should buy something, why they want to have something they wouldn't know they need. No one had one and no one missed it. Yeah? And so this is where the term evangelism comes from, explaining to people and delivering the message why you should have something that you don't think you need. And on the other hand, also, it is a revolution, right? The PC was not something like just a new kitchen table or maybe a new oven. It was a revolution in the way that we work, communicate, think, even live. And in particular, the Macintosh was perceived to be a revolution apart from the personal computer itself. And now it's the same, basically, with new energy. Electricity comes out of the power plug, right? You don't need a photovoltaic rooftop system. You have electricity without it. So why should you buy one? It's expensive. It easily costs you 20,000 euros, which translates maybe to 25,000 US dollars or so. Then also a heat pump, for instance. In Germany, it's not very widespread. In Scandinavian countries and other countries around us, it's a common technology. It's not so here in Germany, where we heavily relied on cheap pipeline gas from Russia for a long time. That time is over, so people now are starting to buy heat pumps, but they don't know it yet. Most people have never seen one. And it's also very cost intensive and it has to work. They pay 20,000 euros or even more to get the new heating systems. Then it doesn't really warm the house as it should be. You know, this thing has to work. It's expensive. It's an investment. And the same again with electromobility. Yeah, you need a car that works. It's expensive too. So you don't just, it's not just like a soft drink. You just try it out and next day you maybe don't like it, so you buy another. It's a very heavy investment. And this is why people don't do it overnight. And this is why it's such a big investment barrier, because everyone who buys a heat pump or who buys an electric vehicle or a rooftop solar system buys it the first and maybe only time in his life even. So it's high complexity and very cost intensive. So this is why there is so many barriers to it.
And what got you interested in this field? Tell me about your
Yeah,
journey.
yeah. I was a big nerd when I was in my teenager years. My family was quite poor. My mom was a single mom, raising my older brother and myself alone, living in a small rural town in the deep woods of Bavaria, close to the Czech border, which was Soviet Union still when I was born. So very remote, very poor. I didn't have many friends. So what did I do? I started to read because you can read books just by yourself. It doesn't cost much in the public library. This is how I started to just read. And I found a few books, even by Al Gore. You guys might know him. He was a former US vice president, then later running for president against George W. Bush and losing the election because of Florida. A few hundred votes were missing for him, and then George W. Bush won.
Don't
Ralph,
remind
Na Ralph Nader stole him a lot of votes. So
me.
people who didn't like Al Gore, didn't like Bush, they voted for Ralph Nader, and then they got Bush.
It does happen.
Yeah. God spare me the purists. So I was a big fan of Al Gore. He wrote about climate change already at the time. So he was one of the forerunners of climate protection. In the early 90s, climate change was not big of a deal yet. The science was there already. We knew what would happen. But of course, this was just after the ozone layer was protected and after the Berlin Wall fell and the Soviet Union collapsed. We had other topics at the time, right? German unification, bringing the two countries together. But still, I was super interested in climate change because I understood it's a crisis. We have to do something about it. I was young at the time. I was like, okay, I want to live on this planet for the rest of my life. And the rest of my life was almost my entire life when I was very young. This is why I got into renewable energy. This is why I got into climate action. I started an NGO for youth, climate action later. Wrote a few books about it, about new energy, about the climate. I joined the German Armed Forces. This was during COVID. Mario Kohle, the founder of Enpal, which was at the time a small startup, asked me to come on board, join his startup. I said no. I told him, I work for the armed forces now. We have to do something for our national security. He convinced me, saying the magic words, but you want to do energy and protect national security in the atmosphere? I said yes. And since then, this is 4 years ago, I'm protecting our national security and sovereignty in the atmosphere.
Well, that's amazing. And, that's actually really interesting because now the conversation of climate tech has really shifted to security tech and resilience tech. And so, looking at these technologies from more of a security lens is fits right into your story.
It does. I mean, 10 years ago, I and many others already warned against the pipeline from Russia, the so-called Nord Stream 2 pipeline. We argued it's crazy and it's dangerous to put everything on Russia. Never put all your eggs in one basket.
Mhm.
It's an old wisdom, which is true. But what did we do in Germany? We put all our eggs in one basket, and that basket was Russia for our gas and oil. So we built that pipeline, Nord Stream 1, Nord Stream 2. Then Putin did what everyone warned against. He used oil and gas as a weapon against the Free West. He attacked Ukraine the second time in 2022 and then just cut off the gas supply to Germany and to Western Europe almost overnight in the summer of 2022. And 55%, so more than half of the entire German gas, was dependent on Russia. So now we substituted that with Norwegian gas. Norway is a reliable partner, but also here the pipeline is undersea, and it's crazily easy to cut that pipeline, to just destroy it. As we've seen with Nord Stream 2, there was one scuba diving commando from Ukraine. So it's very easy to destroy a pipeline. And what would happen if now also the pipeline to Norway is cut? Then this means an economic recession in entire Europe because we can't just replace that gas with, let's say, Dutch gas or Belgian gas or UK gas. It's not enough. So we would need LNG, so liquefied natural gas, but this comes in big freight cargo ships. The infrastructure is just not there. The amounts in which Europe would need it, it's just not there. And then it would come from the US. Also, the US now in these times are not the most reliable partner anymore, and neither are the Middle East countries like Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and also they don't have the infrastructure. And on top of this, LNG will always be more expensive than pipeline gas because you have to liquefy it, then you have to deliquefy it, you have to transport it with cargo ships. It's way more expensive and way more complicated than just the typical conventional pipeline gas. So we have to shift away very fast from gas. One third of German gas supply goes into heating, and this is why we need heat pumps. The more, the faster, the better. Not only because of climate that comes on top, but because of our national security and sovereignty. It's a matter of national security. And I'm saying this as someone who works for the armed forces before in the innovation unit, seeing what happens out there. So this is why we are shifting now quite fast to renewables because they are freedom energies. It's freedom not to be dependent on other hostile nations, on oil and gas countries that are not friendly towards the West, towards freedom. And this is why we need our homegrown renewable energies like wind and solar.
And speaking of homegrown, that's Enpal. We have international listeners too for this podcast. So for those who may not be as familiar, could you give an overview of what Enpal does and its growth story? Because it only was founded in 2017, which is pretty incredible.
It is a very young company indeed, founded in 2017 and then growing quite slowly over the following 4 or 5 years. When I joined Enpal 4 years ago, it was still a small startup, a few hundred employees. Some people would say a few hundred employees for a startup already a lot, but it's not the typical like Instagram-like company. It's a hardware heavy business model. This is why you need a lot of workers, installers, like blue collar workers out in the field, and of course also white collar workers who do all the service in the office, who do all the sales in the office. And then when COVID hit us, we were the only ones who had video sales implemented already.
Mm.
Or the other companies in the sector, they were still driving to the customer, to the homeowner, sitting down on his couch with pen and paper and explaining him, oh, you have a very nice rooftop, you need a solar system on it. We didn't have this. We only had video sales. When COVID hit us, we were the only ones who could still sell solar energy systems.
Mm.
And no one else could because they couldn't drive to the customer anymore. Second, what we did is when COVID started, we founded our own supply chain center in Shenzhen in China because everything now comes from China. China not only dominates the solar manufacturing industry, China now is the solar manufacturing industry worldwide. 98% of all solar wafer production capacity is in China. So you can't go around it. Also here you have to diversify it, the supply chain. But this is why we founded our supply chain center in Shenzhen in China when COVID started, because we anticipated that supply chains will be fragile. This saved us in the following years because all the other companies in Germany and almost also in Europe, they didn't have secure supply chains. Then came the attack of Russia against Ukraine in February 2022. Because of the rising, exploding gas prices and oil prices, the electricity prices too exploded, skyrocketed overnight. So everyone wanted a solar energy system and a heat pump, also overnight. And we were the only ones who could deliver within a few weeks and not a few months or even a year. Imagine a year of waiting time for a conventional solar rooftop system, which is an easy thing to do, basically.
Right.
It's a commodity. It's not something, it's not rocket science. So you usually wait a few weeks and not a few months or even a year. But we were able to deliver within a few weeks because we had the installation forces with our own training center. We had the hardware because we had reliable supply chains because of our supply chain center in Shenzhen in China. And we had the video sales implemented because also then, even in 2022, there were some times when you still were not allowed because of regulatory frameworks, because of COVID still, to meet people. So also there you were cut off from your customer relations if it was physical. So these three features helped us to grow very fast. And of course, lots of tears and blood and sweat because it's very hard to scale such a business that is not just a simple app or software, which you can just replicate easily. It's a hardware product that you have to install in the basement or on the rooftop with installers. Installers are also just humans. They make mistakes, right? So it's really blood, sweat, and tears to scale such a hardware product, a heavy business model that we achieved so successfully and are now the biggest solar rooftop installer in the B2C market in entire Europe, the largest heat pump installer in Germany, also the largest smart meter operator in Germany, and now also on the path to installing the largest virtual power plant, short VPP, in Germany, which is a sort of a decentralized giga battery combining and connecting all the assets that we installed, so all the solar energy systems, the batteries, the wall boxes for the electric vehicles, and the heat pumps to a gigantic decentralized battery and balance out the up and down of solar and wind in the system.
You mentioned installers and the trainer, the people on the ground who are actually putting these systems together quite a bit. And I keep hearing from industry leaders that this is a challenge in Germany, that there's not enough trained workers to do this. How is Enpal handling the worker shortage for installation?
That's true. There is a lack of trained workers, in particular when it comes to electricians or roofers who climb on the roof and install your solar energy system. Also when it comes to heating systems. So in every field, there is a lack of skilled workforce. This is why we founded our Enpal Academy a few years back. So we are training workers in that field for heat pump installers, for solar installers. We are doing upskilling for electricians so that they are better in terms of speed and quality when it comes to the electrical part of the system. And so this is why we don't have really this shortage of workers. And now comes on top that in the last 2 years, after the skyrocketing demand has fallen again, but everyone was going as a company into that field and offering solar systems, that now that demand has shrunk while the supply is still there. And it's even grown because everyone was now producing solar panels. Everyone was then also offering installation services because they thought, oh no, it's a gold rush. So everyone is rushing just into that field. And now as the demand has shrunk again, many companies in Germany, also Europe, have gone bankrupt. So there is plenty of workers now who were set free by this. And so there is a heavy market consolidation underway. And this is why we also can't just hire those workers or just have partners with external firms and partner up with those local independent installers and have a partnership for the installation. So this is why we could really solve it. It's like a first principles thinking. So if you want to build a rocket, first principle thinking means you just started from a new. So you don't start from the rocket that is there already. You completely redesign it. And this is how we did our planning for the future. We just thought, okay, there is a lack of trained workers, so we don't even start to cope with the system somehow, but we just made up our own training center, which is the largest one in Europe.
Mm.
And so we always were able to train enough workers so we could scale in the speed and quality that we wanted and needed to.
Yeah, that's amazing. I'm actually strongly reminded of another company I knew when I lived in Africa that had a similar model because there weren't enough installed trained workforce to do this installation work. So they built an academy too
Yeah,
to solve
very
that
good.
problem.
Yeah, very
So
good.
yeah, that's great that you're doing the same here. And sounds like you're open to partnerships on that front too, which is actually quite interesting also for some of our listeners. So I'm very interested in the fact that you're a B2C company, you've scaled on the B2C route, but you told me when we met that you're also entering the B2B market. So what does that look like for you? Why this additional focus? What opportunities are you seeing?
Yes, there is two different routes when it comes to B2B. First of all, the classical B2B sector. This is like large rooftop systems for commerce and industry. So what we did for like private customers, for homeowners, we are now also doing for, let's say you are a supermarket owner or an industry facility owner, like any larger rooftop, we can also build now. This takes more time than the average private home, but then the system is much larger. So that's good. It's just a matter of diversifying your portfolio. So this is why we did it. And we also see there lots of growth potential. So why not tap also into that market? The other route, the more interesting, the more exciting, is the B2B2C route. That means we are also now partnering up with local independent installers and offering them services and products. Maybe like a sort of Amazon Prime for installers. Imagine you are a local installer in any smaller town and you realize, oh, tomorrow I have that construction site with my customer, but I'm still lacking an inverter there. And also I'm missing 5 solar panels. You go on our website, you order it, and we deliver it within 24 hours to your construction site. So it's like Amazon Prime for you. Payment solution for your customers. We can do the rooftop planning for you, so you don't have to do the bureaucracy anymore. We can do the grid connection bureaucracy for you. We can even do lead generation for you. So the entire range of service and products we can deliver to you. The only thing you would have to do still is the installation part. Everything else we can check over for you if you wish. You don't have a standing contract. You just order on the go as you wish, as you prefer, as your needs are. You can just buy our goods and services as you need them. Yeah, why not rely on the thousands and thousands of smaller and medium-sized installation companies out there and turn them from competitors into partners? And that's amazing. It's like a platform model. It's indeed a bit like Amazon because also Amazon doesn't just, they don't sell their own stuff. They are rather a platform for other vendors to sell their stuff. And this is how we also think about Enpal Pro, our B2B2C arm, turning competitors into partners. And the energy transition from fossil to renewable is such a big Hercules task that we need to have all forces joining together. And this is why I do love this idea of a platform so much, because first of all, I love the platform approach a lot. And second, because I think it's a very good symbol for the energy transition and why we need to work together here.
Yeah, no, I love that. That's such an interesting business model. And I'm curious, I mean, you were talking about SMEs and, traditional small local installers, but do you also see opportunities to work with other startups, maybe who are developing new innovations that could be utilized for Enpal?
Yeah, what we did invest in Entrix, which is AI battery startup based in Munich. They brought over the former head of batteries from Tesla, who worked for 4 years for Tesla in charge of all stationary batteries worldwide from Hawaii to Australia. And they do AI in batteries
Mm,
called Entrix in Munich. We invested in them.
nice.
And then we formed a joint venture called Flexa. So they bring in their AI power. We bring in our hardware assets and our customers. And together we are building the biggest virtual power plant in Germany, connecting all those assets into one decentralized gigabattery. And this is very new, this is very innovative. That doesn't exist in that field yet in Germany, really. So there is a few approaches, there were a few pioneers in that market, but no, we are leading in that field and it's urgently needed because there is now so much solar power in Germany that we have too much of solar power. So we have in like basically every day from spring to fall, from 11 a.m. to 4 p.m., we have too much electricity in the grid because solar is feeding in too much. And all the batteries are not intelligent enough to work for the grid. They work for, or they are optimized for your own home. When the sun rises, the battery charges, then the battery is fully loaded around 11 a.m., maybe noon, and then the solar energy system would just feed into the grid. But as all the other photovoltaic systems also feed into the grid, you have too much of it. It's not intelligently steered or managed. And then in the evening, people would come home from work, they turn on the oven, the production or like the demand for electricity rises, so they consume the electricity from the battery, and at night the battery just lies idle and is empty. Yeah. So it's the opposite of what you actually need because the demand in the grid is highest in the morning and in the evening. And the battery should feed in the morning into the grid and in the evening to the grid. This is what California does successfully. Yeah. But we don't do this yet in Germany. So what we do at Enpal with our virtual power plant is connecting all those batteries and solar energy systems with the market, sending them price signals so that the batteries would know I can charge from the grid at night, feed into the grid in the morning when demand rises. So we don't have to put on all the gas power plants. We just use the batteries. Then at noon, the battery is empty because they fed in the electricity in the morning. So they charge from either from the sun or from the grid. And then in the evening, we feed in the electricity again to the grid. So this is what happens with our virtual power plant. It's the opposite of what a conventional, not smart solar energy system would do.
Oh, that's really cool. And yeah, it sounds to me like scale for you is collaboration, it's partnership, it's, working with the SMEs, it's working with the blue collar workforces, it's working with startups that are running innovations. So, if you were sharing tips with other founders in this space about how to scale, is that what you would say, or would you have additional advice?
Yeah, my advice maybe would be the principle that we use at Enpal is crawl, walk, run,
Mm.
fly. So do all the mistakes that you can do in the crawling phase. Because when you scale, there should no mistakes happen. In particular, when it comes to such a hardware heavy business model as with Enpal, I mean, when we go to a customer's house and we build a rooftop solar power plant there, the customer doesn't want to say afterwards to us, oh, I wanted a solar energy system, but you gave me a Swiss cheese because his rooftop is full of holes because we did mistakes.
Mhm.
You don't want this to happen because this just destroys your reputation. It costs you lots of money because of course you have to fix it, and no insurance will ever cover you anymore if you
Yeah,
do
I
that
mean,
a lot
it's
of
the
times.
reputation of solar in
Yeah,
general.
yes, indeed. So you make all the mistakes you can make in the crawling phase, and then you can scale even faster and with more confidence. Often we are still trying everything out for a year or two before we even think about scaling. One example given, our heat pump business. We built 100 heat pumps before we even announced that we are entering that market.
Mm.
Then in the second year, we built 1,000 heat pumps. In the third year, more than 4,000 heat pumps. In the fourth year, this year, we will probably build more than 10,000 heat pumps. And this with a heating system that is very complicated to install. I mean, a heat pump is a sort of the diva of heating systems because you have to really know how to do it. Otherwise, it will cost you too much money for the electricity that you use, or it won't make your house warm. So you have to also be very good in what you're doing when you want to scale that business. So make all the mistakes possible in the crawling phase and then walk, run, fly.
What does the next 5 to 15 years look like for Enpal?
We now have diversified our business model very nicely. We started as a one-trick pony with a business model solar for rent. So you could rent solar panels from us, and this was our unique selling point. And now you can buy solar systems from us. You can finance them with our flexible financing model. You can buy also the batteries from us, the smart meters, heat pumps. So the entire package in an integrated solution, including our AI-based energy manager called Enpal One Plus that connects all the systems into that virtual power plant I spoke about recently. We have the B2B arm for commerce and industry. We have the B2B2C arm, the platform model for local installers that now become our partners instead of being our competitors. We started our branch in Italy. We will now also start other branches in other countries too. First in Europe, then maybe in the future in other countries. So there is a lot to do.
Yeah.
And the framework that the lawmakers set changes every day.
Right.
We have to be very agile and flexible when it comes to adjusting to new regulatory frameworks. We have a new government now in office under conservative leadership. Now it's the Conservatives and the Labour Party. Also, of course, they will change a few things. We have very volatile prices at the market for both fossil energies and for electricity. So we will scale this. And I think this is basically enough to do. We'll have a few more product innovations. I mean, we do heat pumps. Germany is not big in air conditioning yet, but getting more into it because of
Right.
climate change, because of the global heating. It gets more hot in Germany too. So people are buying now ACs as well. So maybe why not do this if you have 100,000 customers now? They're all homeowners. Why not just send an email out to 100,000 customers asking, hey, do you want an AC? If just 5% of them say yes, then we can build 5,000 air conditioning systems. I think the primary goal is now to scale the company via profitable, keeping and sustaining that profitability, scaling the installation numbers, scaling our revenues, and then becoming a more and more diversified and more international company.
Amazing. And anything our listeners can do to support you on this?
Yeah. Well, if you live in Germany or in Italy, of course, we need people work for us with a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, but also lots of fun. And of course, a mission behind it, because I know every day when I wake up and stand in front of my mirror in the bathroom why I do this. So we have lots of motivation because we know what we do. It's not just a bullshit job, filling in papers and not knowing for which reason, for which goal. So it's just a very fascinating and motivating job and task that we have here at Enpal on the construction side. So if you're an installer or if you are a sales agent or customer service agent or anything else, we need lawyers. We do need everything. So just join us.
Hiring.
Yeah, we are hiring. Yes, we are hiring and we need you. Just ask us for an offer. If you are our local installer, ask us for partnerships. So we want to collaborate. And if you are just a citizen, get informed about energy, get informed about climate, get informed about what happens with the shadow fleet of Russia and all the other questions around it, because there's so much fake news out there. So just inform yourself and build your own opinion.
Ah. Well, Wolfgang, this was a great conversation. Thank you so much for sharing all of your journey, your insights, your passion. I can clearly hear for clean energy. Thanks to our listeners for tuning in to Climatic Scale, where we feature industry leaders, corporates, and scaling startups to discuss the energy transition. You can follow us on Substack, Spotify, or Apple Podcasts. Thanks again. Bye for now.
Thanks for having me, Enrique.